Jim Carrey, Paul McCartney, and Avril Lavigne might not be who you think they are. But before we get to Avril and Paul, I want to start with what showed up in my comments a few months ago after Jim Carrey made a public appearance that was just odd. One person said, "I'm not crazy. I've watched this man for 30 plus years. This is not Jim. It's not. I don't know what to say." Another said, "Jim Carrey is the complete opposite of someone who would have had work done on his face. Guy didn't speak like Jim Carrey at all. Completely different voice." And a speech pathologist said his voice was measurably different. And then there was the comment that stuck with me the most. "If it is Jim, I'm sad. If it's not him, I'm also sad." And I think that comment is the entire video. See, what that person is really saying is, either way, something I trusted is gone. The face I grew up with is either physically gone or emotionally gone, and I can't tell which one is worse. That's not a conspiracy, that's grief. And whether or not that grief is justified doesn't even matter, because the real reason celebrity replacement theory is disturbing is even darker than you realize. And in this video, I'm going to show you why. Celebrity replacement theory did not just start on TikTok or social media. It started in a college newspaper in Iowa on September 17th, 1969, when a Drake University student named Tim Harper published an article called "Is Beatle Paul McCartney Dead?" The piece laid out a rumor that had been floating around campus, that Paul McCartney had died in a 1966 car accident and that the surviving Beatles had quietly replaced him. The evidence was supposedly hidden in the album covers: Paul barefoot on Abbey Road, the Black Carnation on Magical Mystery Tour, lyrics played backwards. The article didn't go anywhere at first, but about a month later, a Detroit DJ named Russ Gibb took a call on air about it. The phone lines lit up. And then a University of Michigan student named Fred Labor wrote a satirical Abbey Road review for the student paper called "McCartney Dead: New Evidence Brought to Light." Labor invented half the clues. He made up the name of Paul's replacement, William Campbell, as a joke. And he later admitted he was stunned when newspapers across the country picked it up as fact. The story was already moving too fast. By November, Life magazine had tracked Paul down at his farm in Scotland and put him on the cover with his family. The headline was, "Paul is still with us." He had given a BBC interview a few weeks before where he said, quote, "If the conclusion you reach is that I'm dead, then you're wrong, because I'm alive and living in Scotland." But it didn't matter. The people who needed to believe he was dead were never going to accept evidence to the contrary. Fast forward almost 60 years, and the template is identical. In 2011, a Brazilian blog named Avril Está Morta, Avril is Dead, laid out a theory that Avril Lavigne had died by suicide in 2003 and had been replaced by a body double named Valissa Vandella. The evidence? She got taller. Her freckles moved. Her handwriting changed. There was a photo where the name Melissa was written on her hand. Now, the part that most people leave out is if you visit that blog today, the opening line says it was just a demonstration of how conspiracy theories can look true. Meta commentary, a hoax all along. Except that disclaimer wasn't there in 2011. It was added years later after the theory had already escaped, when the original author tried to walk it back and explain it was never supposed to be real. But fans took it seriously anyway. They still do. Even the source admitting they made it up didn't kill it, because by then, no one cared what the source said. And every single time, the so-called clues fall into the same three buckets: a change in physical appearance, a change in voice or behavior, a change in handedness or handwriting, or some other tiny biometric tell, which is exactly what people noticed about Jim Carrey. So why do these specific clues in this specific order keep surfacing across nearly 60 years and dozens of celebrities? Because they're not really clues. They're symptoms of something the human brain does when it loses something it never actually knew. There's a name for this relationship between a fan and a famous person: the parasocial bond. You don't know Jim Carrey, but a part of your brain has filed him under "people I know." For 30 years, his face has been in your living room, and he's been, at least in the part of your brain that doesn't know any better, a friend. And then one day, that friend looks slightly off, sounds slightly off, and the brain is given two options. Option one, accept that the person you cared about has aged, suffered, changed, possibly even been broken by the industry that made them famous. Or option two, the figure on stage is an imposter. Option two is easier. Option two protects your memory. That's why "If it is Jim, I'm sad, and if it's not him, I'm also sad" hits so hard. The viewer has caught themselves between the two options and realized there is no comfortable answer on either side. And this would just be a quirky cultural footnote, a thing fans do, except for what happens when you take the same brain doing this with celebrities and scale it up to events. Because the same brain that says that's not Jim is the brain that says they faked the moon landing. The story isn't really about the event. It's about the unbearable feeling that the world can no longer be trusted at its face value. And here's where I have to be honest with you, because I don't want to leave you with the comfortable conclusion that everyone who suspects a substitution is wrong. They're not always wrong. The US government did dose American citizens with LSD without their consent. That was MKUltra, a CIA program that ran for 20 years before the Church Committee exposed it in 1975. The U.S. Public Health Service did let hundreds of black men go untreated for syphilis to study the disease even after penicillin became the standard cure. That was Tuskegee, and it ran for 40 years. The NSA was, in fact, mass collecting the phone records of ordinary Americans, and we only know it because Edward Snowden walked out of a building in Hawaii with the proof. In each of those cases, the people who said they're lying to us were correct, and the people who said you're paranoid were wrong. So we're left with a genuinely difficult question, and I don't think it's one that I can answer for you. How do you tell the difference between the suspicion that protects you from real abuse of power and the suspicion that protects you from a feeling you don't want to feel? Because the engine is the same: distrust of the official story, pattern recognition in the small details, a community of people online who agree. The honest answer, I think, is that the difference isn't in the suspicion itself. The difference is in what you do with it. A real investigation looks for the evidence that would prove it wrong, while a conspiracy looks for the evidence that confirms it's right. And here's what I keep coming back to. Jim Carrey isn't the subject of this video, neither is Paul or Avril, because if you strip away the famous faces, you're not left with a theory about celebrities, you're left with a worldview, one that says people aren't who they appear to be, that when something feels off, someone must be lying, and that's the part that's actually dark. The most disturbing part about celebrity replacement theory has nothing to do with celebrities, and it has everything to do with the fact that we are slowly losing the ability to believe and trust in other people, because what seems like the most bizarre thing in the world right now is honesty. And if you want to hear more about what really happened to Jim Carrey, then click on this video here. And if you enjoy bizarre content like this, then make sure you're subscribed.